Hello and welcome to Rust Locker. Welcome back. It's been a while since I last did a video, but whilst I've been gone, some developments have happened with the MX5. It failed its last MOT on rust holes. Needs another several hundred at least, maybe even £1,000 worth of welding done to it to get it through. So my options were either to scrap it, break it for parts, go and get another MX5, pay the money to have it fixed, or third option, which is what I've gone for, which was to buy a welder, teach myself how to weld and fix the damn thing myself. So in this video you're going to be seeing what I've been doing over the last couple of months, trying to repair quite nasty rust holes in the underside and the wheel arches of the MX5. There's a few audio issues here and there with the footage. I was grabbing the speaker by accident, but I've tried to cut as much of that out as possible. But if the audio goes a little bit bad for a few seconds, then just bear with it because it'll improve. Anyway, without much talking, I'll get to the footage of when I first started and showing you what's what with one of the arches. Right, so the first issue is up behind here, and as you can see, my wing is not actually attached, and that is because it's all rusted away underneath there. So the inner skin is rusty, but the inner skin of the sill there is rusty, but it's still solid. But obviously the wing's completely eaten away, and there is actually a hole starting from this side in the arch which needs repairing. And that's what actually one of the things that failed on the MOT, was that hole there actually in there. And there's a hole in the floor pan as well, a little one just underneath the driver's side, and there's another one in the front arch around the front, in the other front arch. So I think what I'm going to do first of all is just take this wing off, get this wing away, so then I can see behind here and we can start fixing the rust and fixing and patching that hole up in there. Okay, let's pop the bonnet. Now obviously there's no bolts holding this on at the bottom there. I think there might be one behind there and some along here, so I'll do these. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts there. One behind the door there. Okay, so got the arch off. I didn't actually film the last bit. After I'd undone all the bolts underneath there and along the top here, I actually had to undo the bumper to get to a couple of screws behind there. Ended up taking all of the inner trim out, and then there was just this last bolt here holding it in. I had to get a really long extension bar in there to undo that, and then the arch came away. And what we can see here now is one of the severe rust areas, so all of this is going to need to be kind of cut out and replaced with new metal. To be honest, the amount of work here is a bit overwhelming, so I think I'm just going to take it step by step. I'm going to fix this area and paint it and cure rust it just to protect it for now, so that I can keep the arch off whilst working underneath there. So I think the first thing is to just get as much of this surface rust off. None of it's too serious, it's just surface rust here, and then I'm going to paint this crash bar or whatever this is called, the inner skin, just to protect this top. Found some more serious rust under there. That's going to be a pain to fix. Anyway, so I'm going to carry on sorting this out, get to just give it some paint. I'll probably just use normal sort of rust proofer and then hammerite. Never going to see any of this, so as long as it's a thin enough coat to not actually cause any issues, like I don't mess up the threads or anything, then it doesn't really matter what kind of paint job is on there. Right, so I wheeled all the rust away and then just did a bit of rust treatment on any of the spots just to make sure I got any of the little pinholes. And now after that's dry, I'm just going to give this all a couple of coats, thin coats of hammerite, just to seal it against getting damp in future. Okay, so the paint's still a little bit tacky at the moment, but as you can see it's a lot better than it was. I'm pretty confident that this is going to be fine for a while, but whilst that was all drying and stuff, I've been working underneath here, just trying to do the same, get the little surface bits of rust off. And obviously over here, this is the bad bit. I'm leaving this for now. I'm just getting it as clean as possible so I can see where the actual rust ends and where the good metal starts. I'm going to split this inner arch into sections, so what I'm going to do is probably treat and paint this upper piece here as its own piece. Then I'm going to work on this bar here, I'll talk about that in a minute, and then this section down here, and then obviously do the proper panel repair there. Over here, look, you can see this is where the under tray thing is supposed to clip into a little hole there, but as you can see that's quite a big hole. I'm certainly going to be spraying some rust stuff inside there to try and get all the interior done. I might have to cut a piece out there to repair that. So it's all fun and games. Okay, so I used some of this lovely green looking gel and just kind of splodged it up into the little rusty pinholes in the corners that I couldn't quite get with the wire wheel. And yeah, just leave that now for 20 minutes and then reapply if necessary. Okay, so I've given it a quick wire wheel, and that rust remover has done quite a good job, but I can still see little rust in the dimples and stuff, so I'm still going to treat this. But as you can see, like well, down here, this here used to be the rust. You can see the dimples still, but the gel has really cleaned all the rust out of that one. That looks like almost back to bare metal. So this rust converter does kind of work, but I'm just to be safe, give it some extra overkill, I'm going to put on rust converter as well. Right, so I've stuck some rust converter onto all of the bare patches here. Whilst all this is drying and doing its work, I'm going to start trying to flap disc this area a bit more to try and find where these spot welds are, and maybe drill those out and try and get to the back here, because this is the inner skin here and that's starting to rust there. You can see that this outer skin is actually sort of welded to the inner skin here, which is a bit stupid, seeing as it's not the rest of the way. And as you can see behind it, where it's not welded to it, it's lovely and clean behind there. But this part here, once this front bit rusts through, it's going to start attacking the inner skins. So I do need to get all of this off really, so that I can treat that and see what's going on behind here. So yeah, I'm just going to clean this up as much as I can, try and find out how it's attached. I think this plate here is kind of bent and then lipped here, and then this plate is then sort of spot welded onto it and onto the rest of the body. Unfortunately, it's quite a complicated bit with like this press out bit here as well, so I don't really know how I'm going to replicate this, but you know, as long as I've just got some clean metal over the top of it and welded in, I don't suppose it really matters. I might even take it, you know, put another piece of metal in behind there and take it down, I don't know. But let's get this stripped back a bit more. I've been hacking away on this for a little bit. Had to drill out some spot welds there. I think there's one more there, but I've got most of this chunk out. Okay. Oh dear. So you could say I've made quite a mess of that, but that's my first time cutting a large chunk out of a car. Good news is a lot of this inner that firewall is quite good still. All good there. Cure rust is dried and it's looking pretty good, so I'm gonna put primer and paint up underneath here as well, down to a certain point, and then it might actually look like I'm getting somewhere. Right, meanwhile, down in the shed, I've been working on this, which is a replacement arch panel. I got this second hand, so it did have a little bit of rust, but obviously better than my one. My old one's here, so as you can see now that it's off the car, let me show you some good rust right there. Not a lot left. That's completely knackered. So I got a second hand arch. Just leave that there for a sec. So I've got this second hand arch, but it also had a little bit of rust down the bottom here. This is the old piece that I've chopped out. Fitted a new metal piece in there, welded it up. That's my first bit of panel welding ever. So yeah, basically this was the bottom piece there, and as you can see here, where the rust had been sort of eating away at the little bottom bit where the middle bolt hole is supposed to be there, so obviously that was a bit tricky to just repair just that bit, and there was some other bubbling bits of rust, and this corner here was also nibbled away, so I chopped that out, replaced it with a fresh bit of metal. Basically what I did for this, I used a good tutorial on the internet by Fitzy's Fabrications. I'll leave a link down in the description, but he advocates a technique of building your new metal panel over the original rusty part first, and then doing a technique called the cut and butt. So go and watch his videos if you want to learn more about what I did there. I didn't really film it because this was my first bit of sort of panel welding, and a lot of it I was learning as I was going and just experimenting, and I wanted to concentrate on doing it rather than filming it at the same time. So where we were at the moment, it still needs a bit of finishing work, but it's getting there. I managed to dimple these areas in a little bit with a socket and a bolt, but obviously they're not as nice as the dimples on the original, but I haven't got a tool that will do that, so best I could do was a little bit of a dimple where the bolts go. Hopefully that'll work. Along this side edge here, I haven't quite finished it yet, but along this side edge here I'll trim this down just to continue this lip bit here. Need to finish that off, fill up a few little holes, and then grind it a little bit more. Okay, so here's the wing that I've been working on. This is all the new metal that I welded in. I think I've done an alright job considering it's my first attempt at welding. I had to do this piece along here, and then I realised that it was blowing holes through because there was still a bit of rust deep inside, so then I had to patch up this section here as well. It was a bit of a shit show, to be honest. I had to do this lip along there. I had to remake all of that little thin lip across there. What I've done now is I've basically, as you can see, I've really blobbed on the rust-proof paint, zinc paint. So my theory with this was that because this was all bare metal and this is the sort of the danger zone for rust on MX5s, that I would really paint on quite thick the anti-rust paint. I don't care about runs and blobs and stuff because I'm going to sand this all back smooth and actually use this kind of as primer. I thought, get the rust proof paint on, get it on thick so there's a nice protection, then I can smooth off any runs or anything like that with sandpaper, and then I'll spray over it with you know, with the black colour paint. I've also got this wing here, which was another second-hand wing, but it's in a lot better shape. There's no real bad rust on this one, so hopefully that's just going to be a sand down, prime and paint. So now I've got to get back to fixing the rust holes on the car. Okay, so catching up with where I've got to. It's been a few days since I last filmed, so I'm trying to remember where I got to, but so far what I've done is I've cut out this hole here, just made that a bit cleaner. Still haven't done much with this part here because I think what I'm going to do is basically what I'm trying to do is just do everything in chunks. So you know, if I start cutting off large bits of metal, it's going to be difficult working out how to replace it all, so I'm just trying to do it bit by bit. But because the welder's so big, I don't want to drag it all the way up from my shed just to do a little piece. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but essentially, so I've got this hole here cut out ready for a template to be sort of made up. Before I do that, I'm going to fill in these cavities with some rust proofer. Up here is all rust proofed. I've got as much rust out as I can, rust proofed it and then primed it, so that the underside, this is ready for under seal now. When it gets to the underneath, it's a bit more complicated because as you can see, there's a massive hole in here, there's a few holes in the bottom there, and there's some rust on the inner skin as well, which I want to get off. So for the time being, what I've done is I've taken back to as bare metal as I can this entire rusty section, getting back to the point where it's just surface rust. You know, as you can see, this is all quite solid until you get to about here. So really I just need to cut out these pieces here to replace with fresh metal, but I've taken it back just to make sure that there's no more sort of holes anywhere in the vicinity, and now I'm going to rust proof all of this area except for where I've got to cut out, and paint just like I've done on the inner arch there, and just kind of paint a line so that I know that everything that I've sort of cure rusted from this point backwards isn't going to start rusting over again in between the time it takes me to start fixing these, if that makes sense. Next thing is where the arch bolts in here. The bolts are so rusty and the wing wasn't actually attached that these bolts were just rusted in. Managed to get one out with a special you know, chewy up bit thing. This one's fucked, that's not coming out for anything, so I'm going to have to cut and drill that off. Well, that's where we're at the moment. I'm just kind of trying to do it in chunks, doing it as piece by piece, so I know where I am. Now, getting this welder and the gas all the way up the garden path, out through the house and to the front driveway, really is making me regret buying such a big welder. It's an absolute nightmare because there's gravel all the way up the garden. So I'm going to split it in two. Okay, so we're out. I've got my patch panel done, and it's kind of held in place just on that one corner. I'm going to try and tack that corner so that it holds, and then I get this corner in, and then fill up the and then fill up the welds. Okay, so that gives you a better view, but basically I need that to be in there, and I don't want to push it in too deep because it'll be hard to pull out. It's easier to push in than it is to pull out. Okay, so I'm not going to film me doing the first couple of welds because every time I turn the camera on and do something, it kind of jinxes me. So I'm going to have a go at this, and then I'll speak to you in a minute. Okay, so that's the first little triangle in. It's not pretty. I'm not a professional welder by any means. I'm literally doing the best I can here, but it's in and it's secure. There's plenty of holes still to fill up, but I'll go back round there and get those last little holes. But I'm not that concerned with it just yet, because the next piece, hang on, next piece actually sort of, fuck. As I was saying, the next piece actually fits in, right, so I can get it in the right spot, like that. So actually the bit that I need to weld in on the new piece actually kind of touches the new triangular piece that I've just welded in, so hopefully when I weld that across there to this fresh bit of metal I can get a nice connection going there. So yeah, last minute bit of shape into this to get it as close as I can, and then I'm going to try and weld this bugger in. I'm calling this pretty much done now. Look how solid that is. Fucking hell, man. Yes. So we're now left with this piece down here. So I'm just trying to cut off a chunk which has got all the sort of the rustiest bits in it. Behind there has got surface rust, but it's not too bad. I can probably grind that off and treat it. The factory panel sort of ends here and comes up here, so this piece of metal is exposed. So I think what I'm going to do is actually cut a patch to go right up to this edge here, and then I can weld it in along the side, just to give it some extra protection for the future really. I don't know why they stopped there and didn't come right up against here like they did up here, but I don't know, saved them a few pennies I suppose. So yeah, I'm just trying to cut this piece off here as best I can, try and keep it straight so that it's easier to cut a new panel for this bit, or cut a new piece of metal for this bit rather. So yeah, that's what I'm working on now. Oh yeah. So after a little bit of filler just in the welds and stuff and a coat of paint, it's looking pretty good I think. So this bit is a bit tricky because this is actually like part of the floor. It goes down like that. So if you can see under here, I've cut away what I can along here where the two rust holes were. So I think what I'm gonna do is weld in a patch for this rectangular piece, and then make up this piece, kind of bend it under a little bit, square it off kind of thing, and then try and fill in whatever gap is left in this chunk. Don't know if that's the best option, but that's what I'm going to go with because that's all I can think of to do. But this gives me hope, I suppose, because if I can do this bit, then I'm sure I can work out this. I'm just trying to brush out some of the loose rust. Oh my god, this is terrible. So this is what I'm using for corrosion protection to the pieces that I can't really get to. This is Dynatrol, and I'm just going to spray this in the cavities as much as I can to try and sort of cure the rust that's actually deep inside before it gets too bad. I've made this patch panel and welded it in last weekend, but as you can see it's been raining quite a bit and we've got some surface rust building up already, so I'm going to have to wire wheel or flap disc all of that off again, but I'll show you quickly how I made this piece. Basically I made up a cardboard template like this, and there's a little bulge behind there, so I just drew around the bulge. I made this piece out of metal. I didn't cut this piece out of the metal, I just drew around it, and then I put, which is there, and then I put it over a vise like that, an open vise, and then I just tapped it with a hammer just to get that bulge there, and it worked out okay actually. Going downwards, this is where I'm really starting to struggle a bit now. I kept this panel quite long so that I had a bit of room to sort of flip it under so that I could get this sort of angle. Underneath here where the holes were, I made up some patch panels for this part here next to the sill. And now I've got this piece here which I can bend up, but I still have to do something about this area here. So if I bend this piece up, it'll come over the new patch panel that I've welded in. I don't really care because you know, 2 pieces of metal is better than 1 for protection, I suppose. It's just that once I bend this up, it's going to be quite difficult working out how to then make the last final sort of patch panel for this area. So I'm going to patch this just like I did the other bits, just going to sort of work out the shapes and do little bits followed by little bits. Okay, so I've done this sort of shape and kind of blended that together, so I think when I fold this down and up, that's going to close the gap. I don't really care that it's an overlap because it's underneath the card, no one's going to see it. I just want strength, and then I'll just need to do a little shape here to fit in there. Hopefully that's not rusted out underneath there, it's just, well, maybe, no, that's okay. Okay, so yeah, then I just need to do a shape for this little patch here and neaten it up, and then this side is, well, this corner is done. After a bit of filler and some paint, this piece that I bent up underneath here and overlapped doesn't look too bad, and again it's nice and strong, nice and solid, so should last me a while. This piece here is quite a tricky piece because it's got a bend in it. What I've done is, where is it? Here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap it again. Where this piece here is an overlap anyway, and it's starting to go a bit weak underneath there. So I think what I'm going to do is have this piece kind of like that. I'm going to weld this part in first, and then I can sort of hit this with a hammer just to get it a bit flatter against the bodywork. Alright, that's going to do me. I'm just going to filler up the little gaps around it, paint it, and call this corner pretty much done. I just remembered I've still got to do a patch in there, but at least all of this is going to be done on the underneath, so that's some good progress. For this hole here, I'm going to have to make up a template piece of metal. As you can see, it's a bit of a weird shape, so what I've been doing for gaps like this is sticking over some masking tape like that, and then kind of just working it around the edges to get the outline, and then once you can see it a little bit, I'm going round with a pen, basically just tracing the edge as best I can, like that, and then if I can get both these bits off together, they stay stuck. Now I can go down the shed and I can kind of trace this out onto some metal and cut it out. I know that if I keep to the outside edge of this blue line and make it just a fraction bigger than this template, then I can always sort of just make minor adjustments as I go. I've just gone and cut this bit of metal, and as you can see, it's pretty close. Just need to do a little bit of, just need to shave the edges a little bit, but it's almost there. Okay, so the patch panel now fits in my little patch piece of metal, but as you can see here, there's a new gouge which I accidentally did whilst cleaning out the edges, and that's probably a little bit too big to weld. So I've rather than do the whole piece again, I might just tack on another piece of metal and shape that bit before I weld the rest of it in. So I've just shaped that little bit there that I've just tacked on, and that fits in like that a lot better now. And here we have the new panel that I've just welded in, and came out okay. There was a few little spots where I burnt through a bit more rust, but managed to patch it as I went, and it came out okay. I've sanded this bit back. This was the old repair that someone's done ages ago. They didn't bother grinding it back very much, so I've improved it a little bit. So I'm going to hit this with the filler, some rust cure, and then paint, and then we'll get on to doing some sort of undercoating. Okay, so you can see my patch ups all undercoated in that zinc primer. And now what I've done is I've just washed all this down with some soapy water, because now it is time to put some sort of protective chip protect sort of paint underneath here. And this is the stone chip stuff that I've bought. I don't know if it's the best or any good, but I've seen people on forums recommend it, so this is what I'm going to go with. It's already black, so I don't have to paint it. Underbody coating stone chip protector, so I thought I'd give this a go, although when you read the instructions it seems like it is pretty damaging to your health, so definitely going to be wearing some gloves, goggles, mask. Causes serious eye irritation, respiratory irritation, may cause damage to organs through prolonged or repeated exposure, harmful to aquatic life, do not breathe the vapours. Okay, so I'm not spraying this, I'm going to brush it on, and then obviously mask and goggles and gloves and stuff, and I'll probably start on the underneath just to see how to get the texture with the brush, and then work my way up to the top so that I don't get any on myself. Right, so that's 3 coats of the Gravitex, and I've got to say it's coming out quite nice. I'm enjoying the view so far. But yeah, first coat I put on, I just sort of brushed it on, and then the next 2 coats I kind of like stippled it a little bit to get sort of that rough texture. I'm very happy with it so far. I don't know, I'm going to leave it to dry obviously overnight, and then see how sort of tough it is tomorrow. If it needs another coat, then I can give another coat. I've got plenty of that stuff. Right, so there's still quite a lot of work to be done. I've still got to fit the trim pieces, paint the arch, refit that, and then obviously you've got to go around the other side and do the holes on that side of the car. But this is going to be a pretty long video as it is, so I'm probably going to wrap things up there. Just one thing I did want to mention before anyone catches me out on it. I don't think I've said, but the reason why I'm not taking the coilover out and doing that area behind it is because I've got some new coilovers that I'm going to be fitting after I've got this through its MOT. so when these coilovers come out and I change them over for the new ones, then I'll be doing that little back portion of the inner wheel well. So that's the reasoning behind that. Anyway, I'm going to catch you on the next video. Make sure you like, subscribe and turn on notifications to be made aware of when the next video comes out, and take it easy.